are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your hosts, Blake Ruffino. Along is the other host of this show, the co-host, myself, and Joe DeLeone. Good evening. I always say I am the host because I've done 1,000 episodes, and then I'm like, no, I'm a freaking co-host. I do that every time. But my co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir.
Yeah, we're going much earlier. If anyone hadn't figured that out, the baseball schedule yet again. Different level of baseball. Much different level of baseball is affecting the recording schedule that we're doing the show. Wait, I didn't even get to ask you, though, in pre-show. So what's is that you playing right now? I don't understand.
No, they just got done playing, and then they play again at 5, which,
Why? Was there a rain out or something?
No, they had their double elimination. So they were in a loser's bracket game today, and then now they won in the loser's bracket. So now they got to face North Carolina, which –
okay.
The last time you and I, went live during a LSU baseball game, I got absolutely ripped alive. So I am going to try not to do that for sure. But it doesn't stop us from going. Doesn't stop us from going live. Thank you for being Joe for being so. Oh, by the way, you're back in LA.
Sadly, not permanently. This is almost done. We could be on a, and I tweeted this because it was in relation to the scheduling issue with you and Sean. The Pacific time zone sucks. It sucks. I start my day and everybody else has their shit figured out, and I'm trying to get my feet underneath me. I'm so sick of it. I can't wait to be on Eastern time.
Eastern and Central time is the best time zones to be in. I got to admit, because so much stuff starts in the morning and you're still,
playing catch up the whole day. The whole day is playing catch up, and then the end of the day,
every national show starts, 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's just
stupid.
I get it, but you will be out of there. By the way, I have some very sad news. Dustin Poirier got submitted in round 5.
I almost texted you last night. I knew you'd be upset.
I'm proud of him. But for the first time, a Russian got cut. I think of a young bull. The game plan was good. I am very proud of our good friend Dustin Poirier for cutting the Russian. By the way, did you see when Trump went into Jersey? I did not expect that.
I did see that
from a Jersey crowd. Hello.
Well, you got to take into account it's all the New York people too that are coming in. It's basically like if it was in New York City. I'm surprised that they did it in the Prudential Center though. There's not a lot that Seton Hall basketball and Devils hockey. I just don't know why. I don't know why they wouldn't have done it Madison Square Garden. It's like
they're going to be in Madison Square Garden in November.
Oh, I don't know these things.
Yeah, timing, basketball. And you can only really do one fight a year at Madison Square Garden.
It's a good point. You can't.
You can only do one fight. If you notice, there's no boxing fights at Madison Square Garden anymore. It's only UFC because the gate is so high. Normally, it's like Conor McGregor. I think John Jones returns in September, October in Madison Square Garden, which it's going to be electric. Why are we talking about the UFC?
Yeah, I was about to ask.
But nevertheless, I'm just going to say I'm proud of our Louisiana guy here. But we will go a little bit out west, a guy who has frequented the state of Oklahoma. We continue on our deep dives. We go to the Sooner State in Oklahoma today here, Joe.
Yeah, last year, Oklahoma fans, if you remember, I was very, very bullish on what you guys were capable of doing. You doubted me. I ended up being right that they were a top 12 team for most of the year. They outperformed the expectations, but I don't know if I can sit here and be as optimistic with some roster holes that they have that Oklahoma fans need to look in the mirror for. And then also, God damn, man, we said this 2 years ago, and that video still gets comments on it when we posted saying Oklahoma is going to have a bloodbath their first year in the SEC, and God damn, they have a really, really tough stretch of games that they have.
Look, I forget the gentleman. He comes in the show, and forgive me for forgetting his name. You know how bad, it's not him. I'm just so bad with names. Mm-hmm. But, I went on a show a couple of weeks ago or last week, and Oklahoma fans were ripping me alive. I'm like, you guys don't get it. Like, you legitimately don't understand it. Like if you're going 9-3 in the Big 12, and look, their argument, and we'll talk about this, is Jackson Arnold is better than Dylan Gabriel. Well, he might have better traits than Dylan Gabriel is, but as an overall experienced quarterback, he has not shown anything that he is better.
They think that?
That is what they're saying. They literally think, okay, that Jackson Arnold is going to lead them to a better record in the SEC than what Dylan Gabriel led them to in the Big 12 last year. I swear to God.
Blake, I'm gonna start calling my shot on these. We're gonna get clipped today. We're gonna get clipped, and we're gonna get. I'm telling you, I'm gonna wake up tomorrow and you're gonna text me it's happening again. I'm calling it right now.
You know what's funny is the times that you actually do get clipped, you haven't necessarily been wrong.
The only time I was wrong was when I made a really bad joke that was pulled out of context.
Correct, but Stetson Bennett, I think you're right about his character. Good to see Stetson Bennett back. I mean, now hearing what he went through, I think
he's not gonna make the roster.
Well, you can with the 3 quarterback thing. They only have 3 quarterbacks, so I mean, he could. I just mental health is a big deal. But look, I wouldn't mind being clipped here. Also, we'll talk about the SEC going to 9 conference games. I don't know what the holdup is here. Like, it doesn't bother me that you play 9 conference games. I do understand. However, like a team like Auburn, okay, as an example, whose 2 main opponents will be Alabama and Georgia every year, I understand their complaint, right? Like, I understand that complaint. Tennessee, when Georgia and Alabama are your 2 big rivals that you're going up against every year, I understand your complaint because it's not the same, nor is it equal to any other conference. However, if now that ESPN, it would appear, because they're talking about additional revenue, if they're going to get more money, they're going to play the extra game.
Well, that aspect of things I understand, and I have a counter, not solution, but just a thought on how I think it should be approached instead of just adding another SEC game. But I will say this is 2-3 years in a row that we've talked about this, 2 off seasons in a row. And then when we were doing the Saturday show, I think it got brought up a number of times. I think that the fact that this keeps getting brought up, Blake, is pretty telling that eventually it's just going to be 9. This gets recirculated for a reason. Very rarely do things like this keep getting brought up and then not going forward.
Well, I will tell you what's going to happen with this, okay? And it's going to start pissing some people off, but they're going to do this. The SEC teams are going to stop scheduling hard opponents in week 1.
Well, this is what my counter solution is going to be, and that I'm going to talk about is I would much rather the SEC put together some sort of incentive, or not incentive, but
the argument,
they should play tough non-conference opponents. That should be what the 9 games should be.
You mean like Michigan did? Sarcasm. Okay,
wait. Okay, this is where the disconnect happens. Is I'm not saying that because they're not playing a hard schedule. What I'm saying is, instead of scheduling a 9th SEC game, I think just from a viewership standpoint, what would be entertaining, I would like to see SEC programs play other schools around the country. I think that should be a goal for them.
I don't think that the SEC is the conference that anybody should say it doesn't go out there and play other schools in the non-con. I mean, they have played more teams in the non-conference than anybody in week 1. Now, people say, no, it's the Big Ten. Well, okay. Well, you have more rivalries, for example, okay, like Ohio State, Notre Dame playing. Okay, I get that that's a non-conference game, but yeah, I mean, you have more rivals that are out of your conference than in your conference. So I would just say, or than the SEC, I should say. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the 9 games, and at the end, we'll talk about this video game. I see a lot of people, Joe, talking about this taking the wear and tear off. I get it. I mean, just see what it's like. I mean, it might not be that bad. But they added the thing, though, if your quarterback's hot, though, his ratings go skyrocketing too. So it's a push-pull. So, like, for example, if you complete 10 straight passes, his ratings go up. But if he starts getting hit a lot, then, yeah. I mean, it's real life.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I think that it makes the game a little bit more exciting and realistic. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that stood out in the gameplay that was dropped. But I will say I'm a little worried about the wear and tear system because Madden had something similar. And what it was in Madden was like a long full season wear and tear system where if you had a running back that was getting a lot of carries by the end of the season, his in-game stamina would be lower. And the problem is it was broken. So there were times I had this franchise that I was playing, and every time I got to like week 14, it wouldn't let me put my starting running back in because it was like, oh, his stamina is so depleted he can't play. So I had to turn it off. So I'm a little worried that this sounds like a good concept.
Well, here's the thing. Here's a great thing. You ready?
Uh-huh.
Carry on.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, y'all are not stopping me from playing this damn game. I'm just
going to no. Oh, it could be garbage. I'm still going to play it.
I'm you know what I'm ready for, though? I am ready to win a national championship with LSU and for somebody to say, well, that's the only national championship Brian Kelly's going to win.
By the way, did you know? I don't know if we talked about this. There's no cross console for Dynasty mode.
I saw that, but as he's done before, let's go back to our good buddy Gator Dave over at Gators Breakdown, who, by the way, did say that July 19th would be the day that the game would be released, and EA Sports said he was wrong, and they didn't come back and correct themselves. I have heard through the grapevine. Our good buddy said give them about a month. They want to make sure gameplay is okay before they do that.
No, gotcha. Gotcha.
Well, you better get a PlayStation. That's all I can tell you.
No, I'm not getting a PlayStation. Maybe I was debating it, actually. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He was saying it might be a better.
Why don't you and Sean go halvesies in one?
I'm not sharing what? I'm not sharing a console with him. What am I, 15? This is 2024. I have my own money. No, I'm not doing that.
Okay, well,
you're annoying. That would be
trying to be poor.
Hey, Joe, it's my turn to play with the Xbox or with the PlayStation. Like, no.
Oh, no. I hear you. All right, let's get to it. Everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those social media groups. If you're on Facebook in the new grouping system, I have no idea what's going on. Just figure it out. Hit the like and share for us if you don't mind. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, it's officially June. We're not that far off, buddy. We are not that far off.
It's getting close.
It's getting close. So you need it. We're going to continue on these deep dives. We'll do one today. So everybody hit the like and share. Continue to follow us on all the social medias. Go over to Twitter as well. We're doing the show from there, live there as well, so you can go over there and watch the show as well. Joe, let's get to a quick break. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. We got a deep dive for the Oklahoma Sooners. We do that when we return. Next, stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. We're back. All right. Joe, let's get this thing rolling. We continue on our quest doing deep dives for about the top 30 best teams in college football this upcoming season. Tonight, or today, because we're not going live at 6, but today we go to the Sooner State. We go to Oklahoma. I'm going to do what I always do. I'm going to kick it off to you first. When you look at the Oklahoma Sooners, who are now joining the SEC year one, what are your thoughts about the Sooners?
So I am a big Brent Venables fan, very big advocate for what I think he is capable of doing for the long-term success of this Oklahoma program. I really think that they're going to be good, and he's going to be the man to get them to a consistent clip of 9, 10, maybe even some 11-win seasons. I really do. But I think that if we look at the way that everything is playing out for this 2024 season, it's going to be an uphill battle. I think that's the best way to put it. This isn't a team that I'm going to sit here and scream and shout and go, they stink like I do with some other teams. I think that there is a path for them to have a good year, but it is going to be very difficult. There's going to be a lot of adversity. There's going to be a lot of tough matchups. I think that the way that they approach the transfer portal and some of the names that they brought in, especially the way that their defense looks, makes me feel good about how they're going to play against the tough games on their schedule. Deion Burks is a player who I've been a huge advocate for. I spotted him early at Purdue in the season last year, and I have been banging the table for him as a draft prospect. I think he and Jackson Arnold are going to be in such a nice rhythm. Plus, the rest of that receiving room was getting better as the season went on. I think that they're going to be better offensively, potentially, than they were last year. Defensively, there's just dudes all over the place. We talked about Danny Stutzman. We talked about Billy Bowman at times this year.
Yeah, and Billy Bowman. And we got pushback about Billy Bowman not being our top 5 DBs, which I don't I mean, it's tough. That was tough, but I agree with you.
I think one name to throw out there to pay attention to, Adebawore, who is going to be a redshirt freshman this year, was a highly recruited kid, very impactful player potentially. Here's where I get some pause, Blake. Their offensive line is such an enormous question mark. And this isn't a situation where, well, you're losing a guy. How's it going to look? This isn't like Notre Dame where Joe Alt's gone and you're thinking, how's Charles Jagasaw going to do? No, they lost Tyler Guyton and Walter Rouse, both their tackles. They lost multiple guys to the point where most of their offensive line are new players, transfers, guys that came in. And not many of them were really big name, highly sought after transfers. I know from some people that I've spoke to indirectly about the Oklahoma offensive line situation, they were trying as hard as they could to try and get some offensive linemen. And they struggled. I think if you look in the mirror as an Oklahoma fan, you can sit here and admit that their offensive line is not in a good situation to compared to where it was last year. Like, this is a huge step backward from what they had last season, potentially.
So I'm going to stay on the thought with what you just said very quickly about their offensive line, because I did a deep dive on them on our SEC part, which we'll start picking up now that June is here. I just think we started too early. But look, that's where I agree with you the most. Joe, Hatchett, Hickman, Nawawu, okay? 3 guys that they got from the portal, left guard, center, right guard, okay, that they're going to have to replace. Now, Jake Taylor and Jacob Sexton return at the bookends at tackle. But, Joe, look at how many dudes they went and got in the portal for that offensive line. So let me just stop right there. Before you say that me or Joe or whoever is talking about the offensive line being bad or is talking about the offensive line issues, Brent Venables is the one saying that by his actions, right? And so I've had this conversation with Oklahoma fans before. Brent Venables, clearly believes that their offensive line has issues. That's not – his actions are showing that. Now, can they be better? Maybe. I mean, they did get some good ones. I think Hickman can be a good center. There are a lot of things that we're going to have to wait and see. The problem I have is not necessarily their offensive line, but the combination of a young quarterback going into a second start, offensive line that does not have cohesion going into it. I think that that's a very, very big issue and a very, very big deal. You talk about Deion Burks. I agree with you as a player that Burks is a really good wide receiver. But, Joe, they're going into a conference that they're going to need more from other guys. I like Farouk, their wide receiver. I liked him last year. I know that we spoke about him enough. I don't think that he got enough touches. And I like Sawchuk, the running back. Sawchuk, who had, 9 touchdowns, 120 carries, I thought was really effective too. The issue I have is, Joe, when they needed something, they went to Stoops. Okay, and now that Stoops is not here anymore, can Burks take that step for them? And I say this not saying that Burks is not a good player at all. Don't get what I'm about to say twisted. But I just said, can he be? You don't know if he can or will be because there's so many different things offensively. Joe, you're having to fix an offensive line that's got to get cohesion. You've got a young quarterback that's going to have to work through things. You got a new leading receiver. That's a lot of things that you got to work on going into a new conference. Now, I say all that offensively to say I don't think that they're going to be bad at all. Like
no. That's the key thing that needs to be pointed out here before we get yelled at by Oklahoma fans.
No doubt. I think that they're going to be good, but I think that when you look at them offensively, and I look at, okay, they're going to get in tight ends, like the kid Bauer Sharp from Southeastern, I think it's going to be a playmaker. Like I've seen Bauer Sharp. Okay,
yeah,
like
that kid's good. He's a good athlete.
Very good athlete. Okay, like they've got some really good pieces. The question is, Joe, in this league, all right, like so Tennessee comes to town this year. God forbid that game gets into a shootout. I don't know if you have enough to get in a punch-free punch with them. Now, let me flip to the other side of the ball before they go, ooh, what about our defense? Okay. We talked about Danny Stutzman. I had him as my number 2 linebacker, not necessarily off of traits, but just look at him. Okay, the dude is just a playmaking machine. Joe, the issue I have is, though, where are they getting the sack production from?
Well, this is why I brought up Adebawore. He's currently listed as the second defensive end in the 2 deep, but he was a very highly recruited kid. His brother was an athletic freak at Northwestern.
Okay, so
I think he's something to pay attention to.
Right, like
projecting,
okay,
guessing and projecting are two different things.
Projecting. So let me get to my other point. Even if that kid comes and has double-digit sacks, Joe, they're returning from their starters 4 sacks on their defensive line.
Well, here's where I would push back slightly, is that I think that what Venables did when he was at Clemson, he never had like a twitched-up crazy edge rusher. He had really good linebackers that were smart, and then he had really good.
Says hello.
Cleveland Farrell stunk. Cleveland Farrell was overrated, but he
stunk in the NFL. In college, he literally had 3 years of double-digit sacks. That's very unfair.
What I was trying to finish saying here is that
Dexter
a lot of the talent.
Your science says hello too.
No. I'm saying a lot of the talent was in the interior. So like Dexter Lawrence, like Chris Wilkins, those guys.
They got Demonic Williams in the portal as well, right?
That's why I'm not super worried about the sack production, because it's always been a collective unit playing together as a whole. And I will go as far as to say I think this is one of the better front sevens in the SEC. Like I don't think that's not an insane take to have here. It's not one of the best
on their defensive line.
Yeah,
what you're saying?
Linebackers, defensive line collectively. I wouldn't say it's like top 3, but I would say it's in it's a big conference now.
I would say it's top 5. I like because I thought Georgia, Texas,
Ole Miss.
Okay, so I'm like, are they better than those 3? That was the question I was going to have. Going back to it all, here's where defensively, I'm with you. I don't think they're going to have issues. I do worry about sack production, like where are they going to get that from? However, here's the problem I have again, just so we're clear. You got Hatchett from Washington. Okay, you go and get Spencer Brown from Michigan State. You go get Wee Woo from start. Well, I mean, you still went and got him. I mean, Joe, at worst, he's in your 2 deep. At worst, Spencer Brown's in your 2 deep. Yeah. And God forbid Jake Taylor goes down, right? Like, God forbid.
Yeah.
Okay. You go and get Wee Woo from North Texas. You go and get Casey Thompson to back up Jackson Arnold. So I just don't know about them enough offensively. Now, the conversation that Oklahoma fans got mad at me about was, let's talk about Jackson Arnold for a minute, okay?
Yeah.
Joe, why is it that I feel like that I'm always on an island when I say that we have to be patient with young quarterbacks? Why? Like, I legitimately feel of all the national guys, I was talking to Pate about this a while back too. I was like, dude, why do I always feel like I'm on the island to say, like, hey, man, if Jackson Arnold struggles, like, or has games that he struggles, that's not, like, brother, we had Bryce Young going under 50% in a meaningful SEC game a year after he won a Heisman Trophy. Like, I don't understand this logic of that he's going to just come in here and be better than Dylan Gabriel and we're going to be fine. We're going to go 9-3. He's going to you got arguably outside of Florida, you had the second toughest schedule in the SEC. And it's not like last year when you go into games in the Big 12. Joe, their schedule is brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal. So when I look at Jackson Arnold, do I think he's got traits? Do I think he's mobile enough? Do I think he's athletic inside the pocket? All of those things, yes. Do I think he can get on the outside and run a little bit? Also, yes. I just don't know if he's completely ready to take them where they think that they need to be.
Well, and here's where I come down on him too. I think it's okay to be optimistic about a sophomore quarterback when he takes over. I think that's completely okay.
It's completely natural. Football fans too. We always love the backup, right? Like we always love the backup quarterback.
Well, but more importantly, we love the 5-star kid that was highly recruited. And look,
very fair.
We saw Nico flash some things against Iowa, which was a really good defense.
Did you see Jackson Arnold flash as much as Nico?
This is what I'm trying to say here is that the one opportunity we got to see Jackson Arnold play, he threw 3 interceptions and was like hovering around 50% completion percentage in the bowl game that they played against Arizona.
In his first start, which
wait. So this is what I'm trying to get at though is we can't, if that's all the example that we have of him playing, why are we suddenly propping him up to be some huge breakout star this year? It's not enough context. It's not enough context at all. I'm not saying that he's going to be bad. No, I'm agreeing with you. Oklahoma fans, we got to wait and see before we crown this kid the next Heisman Trophy winner. We got to wait and see before he does something. And for what we just talked about, a young quarterback with an offensive line that has no cohesion, none. And we talk about this with Shedeur Sanders. Not having an offensive line with cohesion is going to be a huge question mark for his performance this year. And Shedeur Sanders proved to us, though, that he is a great decision maker even when he's dealing with pressure.
I agree.
I don't know what Jackson Arnold is going to do this year. There are a lot of question marks that are going to be impacting his performance.
You're gonna have people, and I'm not reading the comments, but let me tell you what I know because I've done this. You're gonna say you have people say he almost threw for 400 yards, okay, against a top 10 defense who, by the way, had 7 guys out, if I'm not mistaken, in a bowl game. I'm not going to entertain that. If you can't watch a film and say to yourself that there were some bad decisions that were made, and not only that, bad decisions in that spring game, I don't know what to tell you. But let's go here for just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to concede that they beat Temple, they beat Houston, they beat Tulane. Is that fair?
And they beat Maine.
Okay, I wasn't going to go there yet, but they beat Maine.
Okay.
Tennessee at home. I could see them winning that game. I also can see them losing that game because we just got done talking about Tennessee. That team's got a lot of weapons. And if Joe, can they and Tennessee defensively, what Oklahoma fans aren't going to hear here, Tennessee's defense is not a slouch either. That front 7 is ridiculously good. And against what could be a average O-line, they will eat you up, okay? They go to the Plains. They go to Auburn. I don't give 2 shits if who's that quarterback for Auburn. Let me tell you something that I know for a fact over the last 35 years that I've lived, or 34 years that I've lived. Going to Auburn, good luck. Brother, they could legitimately roll out a dude in a wheelchair at quarterback, and that atmosphere and in that place, God forbid it's at night, good luck. You got Texas in the Cotton Bowl. They'll be at 2:30 on ABC. Does Texas want to get revenge? South Carolina, Ole Miss, Maine.
At Ole Miss.
At Ole Miss. But here comes the brutal schedule. At Ole Miss, and then you got Maine. At Missouri. So, I split Ole Miss and Missouri for just a second.
Yeah.
Then you got Alabama and at LSU. Joe, they might be
brutal way to end the season.
It's a brutal way to end the season. So it comes to the part where I look at them coming in. By the way, the schedule's the exact same next year. You're just flip-flopping SEC home and aways here. Okay. I just don't. I don't know if they can get to 9 wins. I think that would be their ceiling if they got there. That is got to be. And by the way, every LSU, if they're relevant, if LSU relevant, I'm going to tell you that last game will be at night. So good luck. Alabama, I don't think that they have the talent, Joe, that Alabama still has. And we'll talk about Alabama at some point I'm sure within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Joe, I don't know. Like going to Como, are we 100% sure when they're going through this stretch that they can win, that they could go 2-2 in that stretch?
I'm in agreement with you here. That was the projection that I had if I was to determine a ceiling. There's just too many hard games for them to go over 9 wins. It's just too difficult. We can't hand out for every single team and say that they're going to win 10 games. We just can't do that. Well, 9 is the absolute ceiling, and that is everything goes like amazing for them. Like the offensive line gels and looks great.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, Oklahoma fans will say that they own Missouri. Yeah, you own Missouri a decade ago.
Very different Missouri team.
It's a very different Missouri team. Joe, I'm just going to be honest. They're not in the last 2. Well, let me make sure. Well, I'll know this for a fact because I think Luther Burden's better than Xavier Worthy. They haven't faced anybody like Luther Burden.
No,
in the last 2 years.
No, we didn't even talk about their corners either. Like I don't. Their corners are fine, but do they have anyone that's going to be able to lock down and slow down Luther Burden for what we're talking about here?
No 9-3 team, Jimmy, is going to the playoff. Sorry.
A 9-3 SEC team could go to the playoff.
Joe, we had 4 10-plus win teams in the SEC. They got 16 teams.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's a good point.
And they're going to get 4 in. No 9-3 team in the SEC nor in the Big Ten or Big Ten is going to get into the playoff. I'm sorry.
I think to put like an actual number on this, I am, and this is an optimistic take, but will not be perceived as one. I really think that they're capable and will win 8 games in 2024. I don't think that Brent Venables, after he got out of his system that first bad year with everything that they were dealing with, and I made a lot of excuses for him and I defended him way more than everybody else did. I think that he is the type of coach that is a high floor coach. And the way that this roster is built defensively focused with a really good front seven, they're going to be able to pick off some of these tough teams that we're talking about here. They're going to be able to upset someone at home.
Even if they beat Mizzou, even if I conceded and said they beat Mizzou, are we 1,000% confident that they can go even and beat? Are they going to have 2 wins versus Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU? Joe, I don't think they're more. I don't think they're more talented than those teams. Now, if they do, I think it's because they outcoached and outschemed those teams. I don't defensively, Joe. They're good, but again, I think it comes to a point where you're going to have to explain to me, okay, or find a way to justify when you're having those struggles in the Big 12 when you got this brutal of a schedule. Brother, Alabama is still going to be really freaking good.
I think what's most plausible to actually occur here is to look at the 2 home games that they have. Like if they're going to pick off some of these wins.
Is what? Alabama and what? Who?
Alabama and Tennessee. So if there's 2 games they pick off here and go 8-4, I think it's probably those 2 games.
Well, if they go 9-3, I think because they'll have 4. Well,
I really don't think 9-3 would have to be like everything's perfect. Like Jackson Arnold's a Heisman finalist. I 9-3. That's a hyperbole. I'm over exaggerating there. 9-3 would require a lot of things going really, really well for you. No serious injuries on your offensive line. They're gelling together. I just don't see a way with it. We named 6 games here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. With 6 games here. 6 games against tough opponents that are equal, if not better than them.
Are you 100% sure that they can beat Auburn on the road in their first true SEC road environment?
That's not right. That's a great point. Is that the other easy games that they have? There's no Vanderbilt on here. They don't have Mississippi State. They got handed teams that just talent-wise are in at least the middle of the SEC or better.
I mean, Joe, we saw two what should have been playoff teams last year. Okay, and I've been preaching this about Auburn for 7 years since I started all this. Joe, I don't care about anybody going into Auburn. Like I will always say that I don't care that Peyton Thorne's there. Now they had bad years under Gene Chizik. That's neither here nor there. The truth is, like they got a lot of battles, and I don't know. See, this is what Oklahoma fans hear when we say this, because I know what you're hearing. Oh, you just think the SEC this, SEC that. No, I've lived it. Okay, like people have lived this. Joe, even going to you talking about Tennessee. I mean, like, look, you got Texas in a neutral site. That's always a neutral site, but legitimately, these away games are not easy. Going to Ole Miss at night's not easy.
No,
not with that team. Okay, not with that.
The best Ole Miss team that we've seen in the last 20 years.
Bill King is a guy who's been covering college football since the 80s. And I thought that he made a great point the other morning on this show. Okay. He was the first college football analyst on XM radio. And he said, point to me a better team that Ole Miss has ever had on paper than this one.
I don't think they ever have. Even when they had Kim Dichie and Laquan Treadwell.
Oh, God, yeah, they're better.
It's better than that.
Because Kim Dichie was not that great, if we're being honest.
Well, and he was also the only guy on that defense. They had other guys, but the front to back, there's depth on that Ole Miss defensive line. So, like, that's one that I'm immediately like, loss. At Ole Miss, loss. Absolutely a loss. They're not beating Ole Miss. Missouri's also a bit of a question mark because even Missouri's also reshuffling their O-line and D-line, so there's going to be some struggles for them.
Well, Simeon Barrow's the guy who might get on their defensive line now that it's looking like he's leaving Miami. That's another topic for a different day.
Yeah.
I just think it's brutal. And I still think that they're really good. If they get there, let me say this before we leave so I don't get canceled by Oklahoma fans. I do think that defense is going to be one of the better defenses in the SEC. Okay? Mm-hmm. You add in guys like David Stone. What can Demonic Williams do? Defensively, I think they're going to be fine. The issue that I clearly have is I just don't know if they're going to be able to score enough. I know that you're high on Burks. I know that you like him a lot. But, Joe, they're going into a place where I just, like, I don't know if they're going to be able to outscore these teams.
If they have offensive issues, I don't think it's going to be from a lack of firepower or from a lack of good quarterback play. It's going to be because of poor offensive line play. That's where I stand on this.
Correct. And Jackson Arnold not getting protected. And look, I mean, and here's the thing, man. Look, you face Temple, Houston, and Tulane. I think Tulane's going to give you a little bit of a fight. They still got a lot of talent on that roster. If your first real battle-tested team that you're going against is Tennessee, that's a hell of a way to really start battle-testing yourself coming into the SEC.
Yeah.
Because you might win that game at home, okay, because you're at home. But I really don't – I mean, what Tennessee is going to come in there and do, though, man? But it's also Nico's first real test on the road, too. Right. So – a lot of storylines going into this. I know that Oklahoma fans feel that they can come in here and just dominate. I don't, Joe. I'm not there. I just can't get there yet. And I will concede if wrong. You know me enough where I will concede if I'm wrong. Anything else on the Oklahoma Sooners?
No, I think the way to wrap this up is just if they go 8-4, I don't think that is that's not an indictment on how good the program is. It's not an indictment that they can't get better in the future. It's just going to be a hard year. Not every single program needs to go 10-2 every single season.
Well, and flipping conference, so
it's a really difficult adverse situation. Like the expectation needs to be calmed a little.
I mean, dude, the games that are away from Norman are brutal. If you would have told me what are the toughest places to play?
Yes.
On the road first year, Auburn would be top 3. Texas in the neutral site clearly, but you do that every year.
Yeah.
Ole Miss when they're rolling, when the Grove is popping, people say, "Oh, it's not that loud." The bullshit, it's not. I've played there. No, the bullshit, it's not. Thank God you got Alabama at home, and then you end the season in Death Valley. Good luck.
It's gonna be a tough stretch.
It's gonna be a tough stretch. All right. Want to get to this SEC 9-game schedule since we're vastly talking about the SEC. Joe, it's being reported that there have been discussions in the SEC in reference to now finally going to a 9-game schedule. Now, there's been apparently conversations, at least what I read from the article that you had sent me, and what had been discussed last week in the SEC meetings, that there would be potential revenue sharing in reference to there being a 9th game. Your thoughts on the SEC potentially finally going to that 9-game schedule?
So first of all, before we start yelling at each other, I am not saying this coming from the side that I think that the SEC doesn't play a tough schedule. I'm not saying that. I'm also not saying that they don't have a difficult non-conference for most of the programs. That's not the case, because you do get to see LSU playing UCLA and USC, which are maybe not the most elite programs in the country, particularly UCLA, but it's still a nationally recognized brand. You see Alabama playing and going to Wisconsin. Texas plays Michigan. There's a lot of intention to play difficult, well-known national brands by the SEC's top teams.
Mm-hmm.
What was brought up in the article, and I think what's going to be the real driving force for this, why it goes to 9 games, is because of the settlement, the House case settlement that we spent time talking about last week. That goes through. There's now a commitment to $30 million that needs to be put forth for these schools to give to their rosters, and then also to give back pay to some of these athletes. There's a lot of money that's going to need to come up from somewhere, and I don't think the SEC is not necessarily hurting to need to do this, but it would benefit them to have that 9th game and to get more confirmed money from ESPN for their rights deal.
All right. It doesn't bother me either which way what they do. Let me just say what has been. I'm not saying this is my argument. Let me tell you what's been the argument. Kentucky plays, Louisville every year, which they have been told that they need to schedule somebody again in the beginning of the year too, but they're playing somebody at the end. So they are playing non-Power 5 teams, okay? Secondly, so does Georgia, so does South Carolina, so do other. Now you get to a place where, there are other teams that do that. I don't think that it is an issue with some of the bigger teams that are in the conference. I think the issue has become is the teams that are not of the caliber of LSU, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Oklahoma, etc. Okay, that's what I think that this is coming down to. And I don't think additional revenue, I don't think those programs care about additional revenue. If you're telling me, like hypothetically, if you're South Carolina and you have a 10-game run where you have Power 5 opponents, I understand where they're coming from because of the central fact their schedule, the schedule that they're playing is not like anybody else's in the country. Joe, we have talked about brutal schedules so far. Who have the two most brutal schedules in the country? Both of them are in the SEC in an 8-game schedule, right? We've talked about Oklahoma just now, and we've talked about Florida. Well, that's an 8-game schedule. So let me just throw, what the counteract has been. Could you imagine Florida having to play Alabama in the mix of all their schedule that they have this year? And the question becomes, is it created equally? Now, what I would tell you is, and you're going to hate me saying this, if you're going to do that in the SEC, you cannot come to me about records being different and teams that are 9-3 in the SEC versus a 10-2 Big Ten team. Because when you start getting there, it's not created equally, right? Meaning there are opponents in the Big Ten that legitimately have a stretch of Iowa, Indiana, Northwestern, and Maryland. Oh, wait, that's just Michigan. So if there's a scenario where Michigan is 10-2, and let's just say Oklahoma is 9-3 this year, who went through the tougher beat to get to where they are? So if you go to a 9-game schedule, revenue or non-revenue, the argument is always going to continue to be made that there is somebody facing a more brutal schedule. Now, let me say this before you go.
Okay.
You know what's going to come of this, right?
What?
The SEC is going to go to 9 games, and a 9-3 team is going to get in over a 10-2 Big Ten team, and they're going to expand.
Wait, who's going to expand the playoff?
I think the playoff will expand because, again, you're going to have to justify to me that, like, okay, just don't freak out when I say this. If Florida goes 9-3, they're not going to, but if Florida goes 9-3 this year, when they've played 11 Power 5 opponents, with that brutal ass schedule, I don't give two shits who is 10-2 in any other conference. They deserve to be in over anybody else after going 9-3 in that conference. And that schedule. When you face Florida State, Texas, LSU, Georgia, Miami in a month and a half span, excuse me for saying that it's not created equally.
I think that the opposite is probably more likely to happen, that if they do expand to 9, that there are going to be other conferences that get the benefit of the doubt.
I agree with that.
And to push back on your point slightly on the fact that if you've got a 9-win SEC team and a 10-win Big Ten team that plays an easier schedule, we have to pay attention to if a team like Michigan goes 10-2 and they smoke, like blow out 20-plus points, all of their non-top 25 opponents that are in the conference.
They blow out Northwestern.
That's still going to be perceived as more impressive if we're just talking like data points, if we're just talking about all those things. That's it's hard to beat a team by 20-plus points.
Not Northwestern, it's not. Let me ask you.
But you'd be Maryland and the mid-level teams and Purdue.
Okay. Which Michigan did last year, is Michigan beating Maryland by 17 points more impressive than Florida on the road losing to Florida State by 3 or 10?
Well, if I watched both of those teams play, I feel like we knew for a fact that even if Michigan wasn't playing, that this was the whole debate that we kept having. Even though we knew Michigan wasn't playing as difficult of a schedule, we could tangibly sit and watch the games and know, this team could win a national title.
It's the argument you and I had about Alabama, right? In reference to, meaning Alabama last year getting in the playoff over Florida State. Here's the truth. All right, I'm ready to be canceled by Florida State fans. They're driving me nuts. Why did Alabama truly get into the playoff? Jordan Travis did have a big deal to do with it. I'm not going to say it didn't.
Okay.
But let's not act like that.
That had most of it to do with it. That had like 90% of it to do with it, because the rest of it was understandable that they were good enough to be there.
Very fair. Very fair. Let's not act like Alabama didn't go through a more brutal schedule than Florida State did. And if we're going to sit here, that is the argument that
but this is where we kind of this is where we always get off track with this shit.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Getting back to the main point, this is why Saban was against it. This is why Kentucky was against it. This is why Kirby was against it originally. Because you have to go to Nick and say, hey, we added Texas. Now, Nick's not here, clearly, but we're adding another top 10 opponent. And Nick, and let me ask you, why did Nick literally fight this the entire way? Why?
Because he knows specifically out of any SEC program, they would always have one of the top 5 hardest schedules in the country. They always would have one because of their consistent rivals of who they play.
Correct. And so to him, let's just say hypothetically, he did not retire this year. Joe, he's got Florida. I mean, he's got Georgia again. They don't care. They're about generating revenue. And the question becomes, when's Georgia going to go to Kyle Field? Oh, by the way, they've never been there. So look, I understand.
Okay, but the conversation isn't who's playing. To go back to what you just brought up a second ago, the conversation is never about who's playing the harder schedule. It's who's the better team. Our eyeballs can see these things, and it's the whole freaking thing that we got yelling about each other is that be an eyeball guy over a resume guy.
But what are you going to do when Texas gets Vanderbilt when they go to a 9-game conference schedule?
That doesn't mean anything. I don't understand why.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't matter. That's what you're telling me. You already know what you know about Texas. It's not it. I get no. This is why most fans want to go to 9 because you get to play other teams. You get to go other places. I understand that. I'm not saying I disagree with the 9-game schedule, Joe. I'm not. I understand their argument. I understand when Mark Stoops and Nick Saban stand up at the podium and say, okay, cool, but it's not, our schedules are not created equally. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with that part of it. I just don't.
I just think
it's kind of stupid. I just think it's
9 conference games. And
I don't think that it would hurt. I don't think that they need to.
I think it's funny
that
they now want to go to it because money's involved.
Yeah, and Sankey said in that article that apparently, we don't make all of our decisions based off of money, but
yeah, he does.
Yes, exactly. He does. I almost pulled that to bring that up. I'm like, that was such a BS quote that he had.
Can I give you a hot take? I know this is going to get us in hot water. Can I give you a hot take?
What?
Has Sankey kind of taken a step back? I've really questioned some of the decisions he's made.
Yeah. I mean, I don't feel as confident about him as I usually do this offseason.
I don't either. That man's making all, but you know why? You know why this is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same thing with who's the Big Ten commissioner? Tony Petitti. Both of them are making money decisions because their revenue gets paid off of money generated.
Yes.
No wonder they're making these decisions.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just the natural way things are flowing. Is that our decision making and our perception of these guys is going to progressively get worse and worse? Because I do think we eventually get to a point where we perceive them like we do Roger Goodell, where we hold them a little bit of a grudge against them because Roger Goodell's a great commissioner and he makes great decisions.
I agree,
but hold a lot of things against him.
Back on McAfee a month ago because what he said, a 18-game schedule. Remember?
Yeah.
Right. And it's about revenue. The issue though becomes, for me at least, and I agree with Lane Gabriel here. He says, in one of those losses in the SEC to top 10 teams could keep them out of a playoff, but 11-0 Ohio State gets in. I'll take it a step differently and say, you know who would have gotten in? Hey, let me ask you this question.
That's a bad comment.
Hold on. No, let me ask you this God's honest question. Who was the better team, LSU this year or Penn State?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's like a cut and dry black and white answer.
But
I don't think that it is.
Because
one team was much better defensively, one was obviously a million years better offensively.
Fair. But Penn State went 10-2 with a far less worse schedule than what LSU did. Far less.
Yeah, but they had close losses. This is a good example. They dominated and blew out every bad team in the Big Ten that they played.
So did LSU.
2 losses were close.
LSU blew out every bad team that they played too. That's not. What's the excuse when LSU does it? And I'm giving an example so people don't freak out.
Okay.
So if LSU blows out all the bad teams that they played, then what? when they blew out Mississippi State.
Yeah, but I am not knocking LSU. I'm trying to prop up Penn State to say that their only losses last year were against the two toughest opponents that they had were two of the best teams in the country.
LSU's 3 losses were against their 3 toughest opponents. 2 that should have been a playoff team.
I mean, and it also, what was the score of the bowl game that Penn State played in?
They got beat by Ole Miss. To my point, one of LSU's losses.
They were missing most
Drew
of the
Aller didn't throw
guys.
for like 50% completion percentage. LSU beats Penn State. And they got blown out by Ole Miss.
Wait. The Ole Miss game, though, that they were missing a number of the guys that got the defensive and offensive guys that got drafted really early last year. So, like, I don't think it's like, I don't like using the bowl games. I don't like using the bowl games.
Took a dump on James Franklin's chest.
Thanks for that graphic detail.
Speaking of James Franklin.
Yeah, that whole situation is I really don't feel like talking about that because it's just so dumb because I don't think he's a very good guy. I've said that multiple times. People I've talked to close to Penn State have said that to me multiple times.
Oh, 100%. All right, you want to wrap this up with this? I
don't know if we got time to get to that because I got to get to another show in 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, I guess what today we figured out. Can I be honest with you? Let me end it here. I would not hate if they kept it at 8 games in the SEC.
No, I don't think that there's no right or wrong answer with it. I don't think that. And then where you and I end up fighting is what resume looks better in a lot of these conversations. And I don't think that there's a right or a wrong answer.
Oh, I do think there's a right and wrong answer.
I think that there needs to be deep, long conversations when comparing two teams. That's where I stand. I don't think it's this team's better. Just boom.
Well, why don't we put it to a vote? You see, here's the question that I've had. Okay, and this is what they've been doing. They've been putting it to a vote, and it's been getting killed. Like, so now there's 16 teams, right? It legitimately has been getting killed every single time that they vote on it. Now that they have money, Sankey's probably going to step in and say, you're going to do this.
Right.
Let the teams vote if they want to do it or not. It doesn't.
I think most of them would vote because like a team like Alabama, or a team like Alabama or Georgia, there's probably not much more money for them to make that's like going to make a difference for them in the team that they can build and the quality of the program that they're going to have because they're already at an elite level. But a team like, let's say Mississippi State or a team like, Missouri or Ole Miss that don't have like long-standing consistent success are going to say probably yes to something like that because it means more money that funnels into their program. I think most athletic directors would say yes to this. Most coaches would say no.
Fair. All right.
Blake. You froze. I was like, I thought I lost you.
Oh, no, I didn't froze. I was just so still like I was in the Marine Corps. See?
You can't do that without blinking.
I can't. That's very true. All right. We'll see y'all again tomorrow. Do you have any idea what we're getting into tomorrow?
Gonna be another deep dive tomorrow.
Clemson? Ohio State.
No, we can't do the good teams too soon.
Okay.
NC State. We did Penn State. We did Penn State this 2 weeks ago. Oh, yeah. Is NC State too lame? I'm excited to do Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's going to be a fun one.
Nobody in the chat right now can name you one Virginia Tech player.
You know what? I thought I knew the name of their quarterback off the top of my head, and I don't.
We'll see y'all tomorrow, man. Peace.